And greetings, dear audience. Good afternoon, morning, evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. Welcome to another Physical AI podcast powered by Phygital, where AI meets the real world. Together with scientists and founders, we explore how machines and human behavior converge in space. Today, I have the pleasure to talk with a dear inner circle mind, Yiannis Aloimonos. Yasuanos, how are you?
Very good, thank you. Thank
I
you for
am
having
very,
me.
I'm very excited to have this conversation with you and double click on a couple of learnings and discovery in the field that touch upon physical AI, Yanis. Are you excited?
Yeah, me too. And I'm very impressed actually by the goals of your team.
Thank you so much, Yanis. So allow me here to actually, for those of you who don't know about Yanis, to introduce Professor Yiannis Aloimonos, who is professor of the computer science at the University of Maryland and also director at the Computer Vision and Robotics Laboratory, a pioneer in active vision, redefining perception as an interactive process rather than just a passive observation. Professor Yanis and his research bridges perception, semantics, and action, exploring how vision, language, and motor control unify into intelligent behavior. Very, very excited about that part, to learn about that part today. And he's a leading voice in embodied AI, advancing how agents perceive and act with purpose in complex real world environment. And last but not least, Professor Aloimonos' decades of work has shaped the foundation truly of perception action intelligence, which is inspiring generation of researchers at intersection of robotics, cognitive science, and physical AI. Are you ready for the first questions, Yanis? Should
Yes,
we double
absolutely.
click on things? Right. All right. All right. So it goes without saying that anything large language and foundational model since truly end of 2022 has been defining a breakthrough in AI, and most probably one of the most fundamental breakthroughs that humanity has seen, right? So we have definitely this momentum influencing also physical intelligence, right? And perception robotics. Now, my question here, and I love to hear your thoughts to expand upon, are how are LLMs becoming meaningfully deployed actually inside more of the robotic system, Yanis?
Uh, yes, actually, as we speak, there are many groups in robotics that are trying to capitalize on the use of LLMs in uh, robotic manipulation and learning of tasks. Uh, but the efforts are, met with extreme difficulty because, um, as we all know, uh, there is a very simple evolutionary argument that language is the last thing that came in the evolution. Uh, our ancestors, I mean, Homo sapiens, that is us, we have language for a couple of 100,000 years. And um, so the ancestors that we had, Homo erectus, Homo habilis, and the whole lineage of Homo, um, they did not have language, but they had physical intelligence. So when language came, then it had something to stand upon. You can call this the perception action complex. And LLMs, as we all know, they have been developed uh, uh, by using all the language that exists in the internet. Uh, and so when it comes to perception and action, LLMs do not know much. And it's a very simple example to make this point. For example, consider the verb open. I say open the door. Now, if you look at the actual movements that you have to do to open the door, let's say there is a handle, you grab the handle, you push it down, and then you push or pull. Then I say open the window, and then you have to unlatch and you have to push it up. Completely different movements. Then I say open the bag, then you pull out the zipper and you move the zipper. Completely different movement. Then I say open the gate. Now you have to find the key, open the lock, pull out the leash, and then you pull the doors and the door open. Again, completely different movements. And so it is very difficult to create actual plans, so to speak, that will solve these problems. So we need additional things. And people have applied the LLMs because the easiest thing to do is because you can write plans in language. So you could use LLMs in some sense for the planning subsystem of the robot. But again, you are, hindered by all these difficulties because there exist behavioral plans that we have and animals have that do not depend on language. So there is ways, and I hope to have the opportunity during this discussion to talk about that you can use this new technology, the foundation models, or the generative AI kind of software for our problem.
Yeah, very interesting. So basically, the world is not perceived, and robots cannot interact based on the input of an LLM, obviously, because there is not enough contextual semantic understanding of the actual world. And now I'm very curious to hear how GenAI fits into this, right? Because GenAI is obviously goes without saying, a very strongly embraced with a variety of use cases nowadays, right? So you mentioned that there are novel ways of actually training intelligent those robots through GenAI AI. So what are possibilities and efforts that you have been seeing, right? That apply the match between physical intelligence, robotic, this intersection, GenAI, physical intelligence, and robotics.
Right. Uh, let me start by referring a few years ago from the company DeepMind, there was an announcement that they were getting out of robotics. And they said that the problem of robotics basically amounts to gathering data from human behavior, from the billions of videos that exist, transmutating it in some way, and using it so that robots can encapsulate it and learn how to perform actions. And they said at that time that it appears that this step is very difficult for the near future, and so they decided to drop it. Now, of course, a few years later, they came back and they are full speed studying very interesting problems, but it is really the key on how are you going to be able to harness all this data that exists about humans performing actions so that robots can learn. And there is some kind of a breakthrough, I would say, that has happened recently. It is not yet in the radar of many people, but Meta, the company, has released some glasses and an EMG band. And what we specifically did is we took all that and we made some modifications. And using these modifications, we now have software that can predict contact and forces in video. So we have video of humans performing various actions, and we know what is the force that is exerted by that finger on that object, and we know when the contact takes place. Now, this becomes significant for a very simple reason. Now, LLMs are predictive models, as we all know. What they do is they are predicting the next token. That's the basis. And from that, they can produce a sequence or produce language. So the question is whether we can use the same kind of technology, but with different tokens. So now assume that you are observing a human performing a manipulation action, and assume that you can tokenize this, that you can develop, you can say, quanta primitives that will become the tokens of this system. And then using the same technology, you'll be able to predict those kinds of tokens, which means you'll be able to generate behavior because you'll be able to do one thing after the other. So one basic idea that we have been following is contact. If someone is doing something, then his hands come into contact with an object or a tool, and then contact is lost, and then there's a new contact, and so on and so forth. So contact becomes a fundamental constraint for breaking the video into the pieces that are between contacts. And there is more to it because about 100 years ago, a guy named Gilbreth, who was, you can say, one of the first industrial psychologists or social psychologists. And he didn't have a degree or an education, but he wanted to help the American worker. So he went to thousands of factories and he observed humans while they were working. And he discovered empirically, this is an empirical discovery, that when a human is performing an action, a manipulation action, then the hands of the human can be in one of 15 different states. And he called those states, so for example, the hand can be moving empty because it's going to grasp something, or the hand is moving with some object, and so on and so forth. So he called these primitives Therbligs. Therblig is his name spelled backwards. So he was a smart guy and he knew that he would live forever because this is a very fundamental idea, because now you can use this, the Therbligs, and as a person is performing manipulation actions with his hands, you can create tokens of this whole activity. And
when you say, Yiannis, the tokens of the whole activity, are we at a point where through the intelligence of the next token, we have multiple variation of possible outcomes? So if I grab something and the moment of action and touch takes place, this could go in several directions. Like if I'm touching a cup, right? Depending how I touch it, right? I can tip it off, or I can grab it, or it can break depending on the material. Like, are we at
It
that
depends
point?
on what you plan to do next.
Okay.
Okay, so the plan of the action that you are following becomes very fundamental, as exactly in the case of language, the meaning of the sentence that you are kind of creating. And so that way, by being able to produce the next token, and you may have options, and you also have in the LLMs, you have options because the system produces the probability for many tokens to be following. And so you can pick actually, at the beginning, they used to pick the highest probability word in LLMs, and later they realized that they get better results if they create a little randomness in picking up. Instead of picking up the highest probability word, you can put the second highest or the third highest uh, with some uh, randomization.
Yeah.
So in the same way, what will follow the subaction, it can be many different things depending on what the goal is. But uh, this gives us the capability now, especially with the new techniques coming from the Meta ARIA glasses and the EMG that I told you we have made a number of modifications. And uh, now having this information makes it feasible to perform training and develop something that is at the level of the existing LLMs for language, but now for behavior. Because as you know very well from the mirror neurons, the understanding of an action and the production of the same action are fundamentally the same problem.
Yeah.
Of course, the understanding doesn't involve any movement because you don't do the action, but you have the action in your mind in a theoretical way, in an abstract sense.
Let me
Uh,
let me double click maybe on things here, Yannis. Very intriguing. So when you talk about action, right, and the reflection also of the perception, right, in terms of the relevancy and how important it is towards intelligence, right. The entire robotic world has traditionally treated these perception and action actually separately so far, right? So perception has been more producing a static representation, and action planning is kind of the derivative from them, right? So
that's
in
right.
in the age of AI, um, have you already experimented, researched, having found breakthrough when it comes to novel architecture that can actually unify, perception, affordance, and movement into maybe one model?
Yeah, this you put your finger on a very fundamental question. Because uh, even as we speak, perception and action are done by different communities. These people, they are in different departments, they go to different conferences, they publish in different journals, and they hardly talk to each other. The action or planning people are mostly control people, and they are in ECE departments, while the perception people, are more signal harmonic analysis kind of people, and you find them in computer science departments mostly. But perception and action are basically the faces of the same coin, because you perceive in order to act, and you act in order to perceive. And so the, there is a very, very interesting interleaving of the perception and action. They are mixed up in some sense, but but they feel different because perception feels like you sit and you watch, you look at the world and you develop representations, where action has actual movement, where You have to do things. So we feel that these two things are somehow different. But if you think about it, when you perform an action, let's say you cut a tomato, how are you going to cut a tomato? First, you will see the knife. That's perception. Then you calculate the location of the knife. That's perception. Then you grasp the knife. That's action and planning and control. Then you see the tomato. That's perception. Then you know where the tomato is. That's perception. Then you move your hand with a knife to the tomato. Now that's action. You perform the cutting movement. That's action. You check whether you cut. That's perception. So what are we seeing here? We are seeing a sequence of perceptions and actions that are one after the other. And all of them together, they make up the thing that you are doing.
The task, the job to be done, right?
Excuse me?
Yeah, they're making up the entire job to be done, right? The entire job to be completed, right?
Exactly. So
Yes.
basically, what this now calls for is something that, again, it's not in the radar of the community, although someone from DeepMind published a paper a couple of years ago where he hinted to this. So the idea is, because when we think of plans and actions, people try to use symbolic models like graphs, hidden Markov models, Markov chains, and so on. But the ultimate model for a plan is a program, that contains both perceptual functions and motoric functions, like the program that we described before, cutting the tomato. And so now you can imagine that all the actions that you do, or you could do, or you can think of, they are nothing but little programs. Now, you can take parts of these programs and mix them with parts of other programs. So programs are compositional. Programs also allow you to do counterfactual reasoning, because you have if, then, if this, then that.
Yeah.
And so
I have
that changes the game, because now if you think you have an action that you are observing, and the ultimate thing to do is to produce the program that is making that action. And that way you can recognize that action and you can perform that action, because this program now becomes a fundamental component of intelligence. And
Yiannis,
so the good thing with programs
Yeah.
is that programs have syntax.
yes,
We all know, anybody who has programmed, we have syntax, we have the grammar of the programming language. That's how we are able to do parsing, and then the compiler is finally, making the code on that basis. And LLMs are very good for programs, or I would say they are better for programs than they are for the actual spoken language.
yeah,
And so with the help of LLMs, I believe we are well set to make important contributions into this field, where we conceptualize the planning as code.
yes.
The planning becomes code.
The planning as code. So to wrap up things here, Yiannis, help our target audience, share with our target audience your vision about maybe an angle that is yet not so much realized. It is very tangible that physical spatial AI, right, is definitely creating a new, call it, species that we as human being will be coexisting with, right? That everybody right now must be have heard by now, which is, the robotics embodiment, the drones, right? We'll have autonomous cars, right? And any form also of glassware. But in all this, what is the benefit of a physical AI directly for human being, not just by human being leveraging the actual work that a robot does, so that we are safely so outsourcing and outtasking the work to a robot, or not just the work that of being a passenger, no longer needing to drive, right? Because the car is driving, right? But what is the direct benefit of physical AI to a human? How does the human benefit from it? What can you share with our audience here? What are your thoughts?
Well, of course, robots and physical intelligence and physical AI and embodied robotics are going to create automatically many tasks, and that is good for humans. But I think you are asking me something else. And I believe the answer to that is something that you could find in the at the door in the oracle of Delphi, that is what it was saying, gnosis afton, that is understand yourself. I believe this approach that is telling us how the action system and the perception system are interacting uh, to provide what cognition needs eventually. It is a new way, a computational way that complements psychology and biology and history and anthropology in the understanding of the human, because it gives us a new way to understand ourselves
Wow.
that was not possible before.
Wow. That is a beautiful way to wrap up things. A new way to understand ourselves. And the word understanding is obviously very deep, right? A new way to discover ourselves, a new way to discover not just us, but us, how we are interacting with the physical space. And in front of the physical space, with the contextual understanding in combination with a purpose. So how people relate to purposes and places in a novel way. Very, very excited about that,
Exactly,
Yanis,
exactly.
right?
I couldn't have said it better.
No, it's all you, Yanis. Thank you so much. I'm humbled to have had this conversation with you. Guys, give it up here for Professor Yiannis Aloimonos. Thank you so much, right? And I would like to invite our listeners, join our physical AI symposium. I'm having here the QR code, happening end of April in Silicon Valley, the very first of its kind, where professors, PhDs, and entrepreneurs will meet. A very curated symposium, right? And so we'll have access to brilliant minds with the brilliant discovery. So sign up here. Thank you so much, Yanis, and I'll see
Thank
you
you. Thank
physical digital dimension. Bye.